welcome back to Tech Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to be talking about kind of the fine balance in pattern writing between being innovative and new and fresh versus kind of using the old familiar formatting that is traditional in quilt patterns. Now, the reason this topic kind of came up is because increasingly I've been seeing a lot of kind of novel ways to lay out and format patterns. And you hear all of this stuff in this kind of crowded online business world that we all work and play in, which is that you need to make yourself stand out. You need to be unique. You need to have something that's kind of uniquely yours that people can attach to. And so, meaning well, pattern writers and designers are starting to try and apply that to their pattern and come up with new, more novel ways to kind of write these patterns and format them. And that's great, right? You want to be creative. You want to introduce new ideas, but sometimes there's certain aspects of patterns that are laid out and written the way that they are for a reason. And by changing it, you've actually introduced a level of complexity that's just really unnecessary and unhelpful for your reader. And so it's kind of like reinventing the wheel, right? There's a reason it's circular. You'd be darn hard to come up with a better wheel that functions better than the ones that we already have. So, some things just don't need to be innovated. And we're going to kind of talk about delineating those two things. It's a very fine line and balance in quilt patterns. And so I just wanted to kind of talk about some of the things that I see and the good and bad. So things that are okay to innovate on or be kind of really creative and come up with new ways to talk about them in your pattern, lay them out in your pattern, are things like notes, things like personal touches of helpful tips about how you would sew this particular unit. Choose your own adventure patterns, right? You can add your own kind of quirk to that a little bit. If you want to introduce techniques like web piecing that are a little bit more non-traditional, like totally a great place to do it. That's a great way to be kind of innovative and unique in your pattern. If you really want to include, directional prints, fussy cutting, pre-cutting options that are well above and beyond what typical patterns have, that's totally okay, right? Great way to kind of express your personality and creativity. I've even seen some designers that kind of use this crust versus filling notation for like the quarter circle, drunkard's path curved units, right? So the filling is the center kind of convex arc, and then the outer arc is basically the crest, which I thought was a really cute way to refer to it. That just adds some personality and some quirk to your pattern that makes it uniquely yours. I think those are all perfectly fine places to be a little bit creative and innovative. Places I would not recommend being innovative are things that are a little bit more functional, right? So cutting tables, fabric requirements tables, you've got two really good examples of that on the side here. And I've got some other videos that I will link below that kind of explain the rationale behind why they're set up the way that they are. But these are things that look very similar across all patterns, and there's a reason for that. Other things like, the pattern organization, the order in which you assemble things, labeling conventions, right? You're not going to use symbols or something like that for many of your piece labels and quilt patterns. You're never going to see that. And there's a very good reason for it, right? These are things that are functional. They're needed there to follow the quilt pattern, because at the end of the day, it's not really a book, right? This is not a creative work necessarily. It is a set of instructions. It's like IKEA furniture. It is instructions for how to make the thing on the cover. And while the thing on the cover is very creative, you don't necessarily want to get creative with your instructions, because the point and the purpose of them, the goal of them, is for them to be as clear and simple and straightforward to follow as possible. And there is a right and a wrong way to do that. Unfortunately, that's just the reality we're dealing with. So things that are functional, that have a purpose in the pattern in order to be able to follow the pattern to a T and make the quilt that's on the front, you don't really want to mess with those. The reason that most quilt patterns have very similar formatting for all of these things is because that's what makes the most sense. That's what the easiest to follow. Additionally, because most quilt patterns use that, it's very familiar to your reader. So even if it's not the most optimized way to do it, you still want to use it because it's very, very familiar for your reader. And so they don't have to expend a lot of mental calories kind of thinking about how to follow it, because they've done it so many times, right? It's just a very, very easy kind of habit pattern to fall back into. I have seen a lot of crazy ways to set up cutting tables and fabric requirements tables. And every single time I see them, it's just way harder to follow. I have yet to see a novel way of putting fabric requirements tables and cutting tables together that is actually helpful. This is just not something that you want to mess around with. So don't spend a lot of energy trying to come up with like the next best thing, because more than likely you're just going to waste a lot of time, because they are pretty good the way that they are. And also you lose that familiarity for your reader, which adds, again, another layer of kind of mental energy that needs to get expended in order to be able to follow these patterns. So the main message here is things that are features in your quilt pattern, totally okay to be creative and innovative with. Go to town, have fun with it, let your freak flag fly. It is totally okay to be that way with features. Things that are functional, right? The things that are needed there for the mechanics of the pattern to complete the instruction set, don't mess with those. The ones that are most common in the patterns that you see in the industry are there for a reason, and I suggest you follow that format in order to get kind of the best product for your reader in the end. I hope that was helpful. This is kind of a little bit of splitting hairs, but I've seen enough of it lately that I did want to talk about it. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe, and I will see you next time for Tech Tip Tuesday. See ya!